Welcome to episode 12 of The Accursed. This is a story you are going to want to listen to from the beginning. If you're just jumping in now, I suggest going back to episode 1 and beginning there. This podcast shares some scares and frights. It also delves into adult themes. Specific content warnings are in the show notes of each episode. Please check there so that you can honor yourself and your needs. I do have a story for you today, but I also want to share a bit more about myself. Something weird happened the other day. It's scary in its own right, but I think the gravity of it, at least the gravity of it for me, would make more sense if I shared more of my experiences with the paranormal. I think I'm ready. I am nervous to do this. I don't want to be called crazy again. Crazy is not a word I like to use. I mean, whenever it's thrown around, and it has been thrown around, it's never really about mental health, is it? No one is actually concerned when they call you crazy. It's just a terrible way to invalidate someone, to dehumanize them. You don't have to listen to or care about crazy. But since it's clearly a sore spot for me, please know this. I have my master's in psychology. I was a practicing therapist for a relatively short period of time. I've been in therapy plenty of times over the years, and I've absolutely discussed many of the things I'm going to tell you here today. I currently have an amazing therapist who is fully aware of all these stories and the podcast. No one has ever been concerned that I'm hallucinating or experiencing psychosis. I've got ADHD and some good old-fashioned generalized anxiety because I live in the world. You don't have to believe what I'm going to tell you. But maybe if you don't, you keep that to yourself, okay? My first memories of anything happening were when I was around 3 or 4. Though I don't really remember it starting, it always just kind of was. I would know things about people, usually someone I was currently physically close to, like in a room with, whether I knew them or not. It was like a little bit of their story would just appear in my head. I would know that they were sad because their husband died, or that they were happy because they just found out they were pregnant. I was really young and had no idea that, one, not everyone just had this random information show up in their mind, and two, that it would be better not to say what was in my head out loud for all to hear. On my way to learning that lesson, I freaked out a whole lot of adults. I got a lot of, "How did you know that?" And I would just shrug and skip off to play or whatever. I would also get messages for people. Those ranged from where to find that missing ring to telling someone that what had been weighing on them wasn't really their fault, or even that the person they loved was okay, even though they had died. Adults didn't know how to react. Why would they? Some thought it was sweet, if not a little strange, and just as many were unsettled and scared. People got angry, demanding to know who told me. They would get mad at my parents if they didn't think they should yell at a child. It took me a while to learn to keep my mouth shut, but sometimes whatever it was that showed up in my head would almost buzz and grow, making it impossible to think until I said something. Then there would finally be quiet again. Then the story in episode 10 happened. That was the first ghost that I saw. It wasn't the last. This is where things got scary for me, when I started seeing ghosts. It's hard for me to even say that out loud even now, the seeing ghosts part. Like, I want to couch it and give you all the other options of what could have happened so that I can cast doubt on myself before you do. But I know what I saw. I know what I experienced. And it has been happening in some degree my whole life. I am ready to stop doubting myself. So, yes, I saw ghosts. I don't anymore. On purpose. I'll get there. Most of the time, the ghosts I saw were connected to a person. They would be standing near them, hovering by them. Sometimes they were family or friends, but other times they didn't seem to have any real connection to the person they haunted. I didn't mind those ghosts so much. I knew without even knowing what they were. I knew that they weren't alive. I knew that they weren't real the way I was. But they didn't scare me much. They usually just had some information they wanted me to pass on. They would look at me and I would know. No conversations were had. I didn't really interact with them. I just knew things I realized the ghosts were telling me. What was scary was when a ghost would show up unattached. They often looked the way they did when they died. Bloodied, bloated, broken. They would get close to me and stare, unblinking, and wanting something from me, even if I didn't know what it was. I was terrified of the woman who stood in the corner of my childhood bedroom, rocking back and forth on her heels. Terrified of the little girl who hid under my desk at school. Terrified of the man at the end of our driveway, the man with blood dripping down his face. They would appear and disappear at will. I just stopped feeling safe or settled. My parents generally believed me, which I am grateful for, but lots of other people didn't. I have a high startle reflex, and I would jump or get visibly scared out of nowhere, or at least nowhere to my classmates, who definitely noticed and were not always kind. Honestly, I don't even know if I blame them. I also lived in a small town, so enough people knew of my weird. Enough people looked at me strangely, and enough people called me crazy. I did get better at hiding my reactions, hiding what was happening to me, hiding in general. But I still saw things. I still knew things. Nothing had really changed for me. When I was around 30, I decided to look for some help in this arena. I lived in LA at the time, so it wasn't hard. I found some intuitives, healers, who helped me hone my skills, set boundaries, generally figure out what the hell was going on. I didn't stop seeing ghosts or getting random messages, though it did get less intense. I began to learn how to control it, and most of the time, I did. I do. But one night, back in my early 30s, I woke up and there was a man with an open wound in his neck standing over my bed. I screamed bloody murder, turned on the light, and watched as he slowly vanished. It wasn't even close to the first time something like that happened. But that one was enough for me. I sat up in bed with the lights on and spoke out loud like a prayer. At that point, I was starting to step into some intuitive healing work of my own, which is what I do when not telling you ghost stories. I said out loud to the room, to whoever was listening, if you want me to do this work I feel called to do, then I need to stop seeing ghosts. I need to stop feeling creeped out like someone's in the room with me, even when I'm alone. I told the universe that I needed to feel safe. It seems so simple in hindsight, but at the time I felt as crazy as I imagined others thought I was. But I didn't care. Something needed to change. I made a declaration that I was done seeing things, that no ghosts or entities or whatever were allowed where I was living, that nothing could show itself to me ever again. I was done. I needed a safe space. And I got one. Truly. Almost immediately, I stopped seeing ghosts. And nothing creepy crossed the threshold of my home. Until the other day. That morning, I woke up early and was just sort of lingering in that in-between space. Not fully awake, but not asleep either. I felt physically fine. After about 20 minutes of lounging, I got up to go to the bathroom. As soon as I crossed the threshold into the bathroom, maybe 3 or 4 steps from the bed, I felt a sharp sting on the back of my neck. I immediately looked in the mirror, and there were 5 razor-thin scratch marks, about 2 to 3 inches long, running vertically down, starting at my hairline. 4 of them are bunched close together, with the 5th just a little further out, like it was a hand, and that 5th one was the thumb. I did take a picture, and I'll put it on Instagram if you want to see it. It would be so easy to write this off as something I did to myself, but the pain was sharp and immediate. I hadn't scratched myself, and I didn't feel anything before I walked into the bathroom. Plus, in order to make those sort of scratch marks, I would have had to twist my hand in a position that would be totally unnatural. I would have remembered doing that. I would love nothing more than to pretend that this didn't happen or to come up with a logical reason why it happened. But those would be lies I made up to soothe myself. And I don't want to do that because I've been dealing with this my entire life. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that ignoring it makes it worse. I've been clearing the energy in my house, and I've been keeping that bathroom door shut, using the guest bath instead. Nothing feels off at the moment, and I really hope it stays that way. But I don't have a lot of hope at the moment around this sort of stuff. So that's my story. The broad strokes, at least. I imagine it's clear as to why that experience both freaked me out and freaked me out a little extra, given the boundaries I've set, the boundaries that have worked for a long time now. I know I've said it before, but I don't know why it's important for me to share all of this with you, except it is. I don't think it's a coincidence that they chose me to give these stories to. someone who's had her own accursed experiences. I know in that way I just know things, that I am part of this equation, even if I don't know why yet. I know that was a lot, and I hope it sheds a little more light on me and why I am here sharing these stories with you. So let's shift gears now and hear a scary story of Hazel's. When this story first arrived, I think it was the first time I saw these individual stories as trying to tell a grander tale. See if you can guess why. I'll fill you in, at least on my theory, when we're done. A baby cried all night. I put my head under the pillow to try and drown out the noise, but I could hear it. Still. Loud and desperate wails, but there was no baby to be found. Momma had sent for me, as she did from time to time, usually to parade me in front of a suitor, showing off her darling daughter she had to live so very far away from. This time was no different, except that an engagement had taken place. A ring on her finger she took to flaunting, as if I were supposed to be impressed, as if I were supposed to care. I answered all of her questions. Isn't it pretty? Aren't you happy for me? Don't you just love it? I said yes every time, but she was sore with me regardless. Mr. Ritchie is what I was told to call him. He was handsome, I suppose, in that way Momma liked. He seemed nice enough, though I could see the shadow hiding behind his eyes. I could see it as plain as day. Momma pretended she couldn't. She was good at pretending. How lucky she was. I did not manage to inherit that particular talent. No, it has been my lot to remember it all. And I did. I do. I remembered the whispers, the promises, the stories that spun once upon a time. I wish I could forget. I remembered when he wanted more than her, how he wanted more than her. He wanted a vessel, a lifeline, a bridge. Momma fawned all over Mr. Ritchie, laughing at whatever he said, fetching him this and that. She kept telling me the story of how they met, flashing her ring around as she did. Said they met in the fall, that he'd been waiting for her. Having seen her from afar, he waited outside the department store she worked at. Waited just to talk to her, a fact that pleased her to no end. Mr. Ritchie lived just outside the city. His house was nothing special, nothing fancy. Looked like all the other houses, laid out neatly on the street. But the way Momma talked, you'd think she lived in a castle and she was dead set on being queen. She walked through the house like it was already hers, telling me how she was going to hire people to paint and where the new sofa would go. I wasn't there to stay. That was the only blessing. I would be there for just a few days. Just long enough to see them get married at the courthouse, and then I could go back. Momma had made the guest room up for me in pinks and frills, as if I were still the little one who would cry for her whenever she left me behind. I was polite just the same. Momma made a show of putting me to bed, even though I was much too old for that. Mr. Ritchie had already gone to sleep, but I suppose she hoped he was listening out. Her voice was honey sweet as she told me to have sweet dreams. The bus ride in had been long, and I was tired. I easily fell into a deep sleep. Waking in the dark, to the rain on the roof and that feeling of not being alone. I squeezed my eyes closed, not wanting to open them, not wanting to see. I tried to listen, to hear what was waiting in the dark. The sound was quiet at first. I thought it was a branch scraping against the window, against something, but the noise quickly got louder, drew closer, twisting itself into a cry. I wondered if maybe there was a baby outside. I had a vision of an infant left on the doorstep in the storm, but it didn't sound like it was coming from outside. It didn't sound like it was coming from anywhere other than under the bed. I pulled the blanket up over my head, my eyes still refusing to open. The cry became louder, clearer. I grabbed the pillow and held it down over my head, hoping it would make the sounds go away. But that only happened when the sun rose. Momma was furious that I kept yawning, angry that I wasn't appreciating all that Mr. Ritchie was doing for us, buying me a new dress for their courthouse wedding, taking us to his country club for lunch. I tried to say thank you, but I could see the shadow peeking out from behind his eyes, and it gave me the shivers each time I looked. He watched me, that shadow, but that was all he could do. If only that was all he could ever do. Momma walked me to my room that next night, gave me a kiss on the cheek, and grabbed my wrist tightly as she whispered that I was not to embarrass her again. To be so willfully ignorant. She was a special breed, Momma was. The crying began as it had the night before. Late. After my eyes finally gave up their fight. After I'd almost managed to forget. There was nothing I could do. Nothing would make it stop, and in the end I sat in front of my door, not knowing what else to do. I suppose I fell asleep as Momma found me in the morning. She was cross. I could see it in her eyes, but Mr. Ritchie came out of their room just before she could scold me. And she just blamed it all on sleepwalking, as if that was something I did. Momma didn't bother with me on the third night. She'd been drinking martini since coming back from a dress alteration, getting meaner and meaner with each sip. The gin sloshed right out of her glass and onto the floor, but she barely noticed as she railed against the world, trying to keep her down, until she narrowed it on me and started to go on about how lucky I was to have her, how insolent and spoiled I'd become, how I was destined for a whole lot of nothing. She only stopped when Mr. Ritchie came home, following him into the den so she could coo over him as he read the paper. I watched from the doorway, not knowing what would get me yelled at. And her eyes flashed to me with anger when he mentioned that he smelled smoke. She ran out to the kitchen, having forgotten about the roast she'd put in the oven earlier. She practically hissed that I had ruined supper, and I ran up the stairs hoping she would forget about me too. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. I woke to the dark, but at least the house was quiet. Yet something still prickled at my skin. I tried to stay still, to stay put, but I needed to use the restroom. I heard the crying again as soon as I opened the door. It was almost a whisper, somewhere far from where I stood. I don't know why I followed. I don't have a good reason except that I knew Momma would be mad, and somehow that seemed like enough. I was a fool, I know, deserving of what I got, I am sure, But I need you to understand that I was still young. And it's so easy to forget in hindsight that we weren't then as we are now. I made my way down the stairs, the crying growing louder with each step I took. I tried to move quietly, tiptoeing so as not to wake Momma. She was a light sleeper, no matter her state. I was halfway down the steps when I saw it. A shadow stretching out near the bottom where no shadow should have been. It bent and twisted until it found shape as a man, gray and dusty. Not Mr. Ritchie, but someone I remembered from times before. I froze, feeling like he'd stolen my breath, and I watched as his mouth stretched into a sickening grin. And then the cry. I gasped, tried to move, to go back up the stairs, but my body was stuck. He just threw his head back as if he were laughing, but the cry only grew louder. His arms reached up, growing like tentacles, until he grabbed my leg and tugged. Slowly, but with force. It felt like a game he was playing, one that I was going to lose. I grabbed the railing, but my feet began to slide out from under me no matter what I did. A hand grabbed me, and I hollered something fierce, figuring I was about to be pulled into two. Hazel, Momma shouted over me in my panic. Enough, she yelled, though I didn't know who she was talking to. And as if it were somehow beholden to her, the shadow unraveled itself and crept back into the corners of someone else's mind. Momma pulled at me again, dragging me into my room, giving me a look, telling me I better be quiet or else. We sat on the bed, taking some time to catch our breath. She looked at me curiously, like she was reading a story on my face, one I didn't even know yet. I thought for a moment she would stop her game. She would tell me it was all right, that she would tell me she saw it too. But instead, she said to wait until morning and she would take me home. And just after daybreak, I heard them fighting, Momma and Mr. Ritchie, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. Momma's eyes were red when she called for me from the bottom of the stairs, saying we would be leaving in 5 minutes. We drove in his car back to the homestead, and Momma drove off the very next day. In the very first story, the very first episode, where Hazel and her family use the Ouija board, or the talking board as I think they call it, the message Rosalie gets is, a man waits for you. And here, the man she meets, the man with the shadow behind his eyes, had been waiting for Rosalie. In that first episode, Hazel deals with a ghost, a man, one that seems to be attached to Rosalie. This shadow, perhaps. The story in episode 5, where Hazel tells the tale of her mother being haunted by a shadow. One that Hazel says she knows what happened to. There's lots of pieces here that reflect back there as well. And I can't help but wonder if the shadow behind Mr. Ritchie's eyes is the shadow from both of those stories. And what is that shadow? What does it do? What does it need? How is it connected to Hazel to Rosalie to their family. So many questions and not enough answers. I have some theories, though. I'll probably share them soon. If you have some theories of your own, I would love to hear them. You are welcome to email me at JoAnna@theaccursed.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, bye. The Accursed is written, created, and all around conjured by me, Anna Dane. You can find out more about the show at theaccursed.com or on Instagram at The Accursed Podcast. You can find out more about me at JoAnnadane.com. The intro and outro song, Cathedral, is provided by Moby Gratis. Want an extra bonus story? Sign up for our mailing list at theaccursed.com and one will be delivered right to your inbox. If you like the show, there are 2 ways you could help us out. First, please consider leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you happen to listen. Second, share us with other folks in your world who might also love a ghost story. Thank you again for listening. Bye.